Anatoly, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
100%. Look, Solana, top 20 coin, came out of nowhere. Well, it didn't come out of nowhere, but it moved up the ranks pretty quick. I need to know what this is. Can you give me a 101 and a little maybe background? How to start?
Um, we built a high performance layer one from scratch. Basically, nothing from previous Ethereum or any other previous layer one was reused. And my background and most of the team were former Qualcomm folks. The folks that build CDMA, LTE, that thing that you hold in your hand. It probably has tech that we worked on. So yeah, we are just relentlessly focused on making the cheapest, fastest possible blockchain.
And when did Solana start?
This was I had this, two coffees and a beer in like late 2017. And I had this kind of like I was staying up till 4 a.m. because I had this realization that you can encode passage of time as data. And that was the start of Solana. The idea that if you have a source of time that's outside of consensus, outside of the network, there's no like mathematical definition of time. Einstein's equations work in both directions. So if you have something that actually represents time, it's a pretty powerful tool for optimization. This was really the foundation of all radio protocols. Like the 2G networks, literally called time division multiple access. So that when I knew I had that missing piece, I would kind of really couldn't sleep for a week, and that was the foundation of Solana.
Okay, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for working at Qualcomm and making my life a lot better. I don't know if it's better actually, but it's a lot more fun. I can tell you that.
We could at least talk to each other, right? Like for the last year. Otherwise, where would we be?
Exactly. So I appreciate that. Time division multiple access. I'm sorry, bro. You gotta dumb this down. What does that mean?
Imagine first radio towers were put up. Two radio things transmit at the same time or with the same frequency. You get noise because radio interferes in the air. Same thing happens in blockchains. Two block producers produce a block at the same time. You get a fork. So that's a noisy state for the network because the network doesn't know what the hell the actual final state is. So you can, if you had a source of time outside of consensus, you can schedule block producers exactly the same way how you schedule radio towers in a radio network. So we literally, like, once I had that light bulb come off in my head, oh, I've got a source of time that's trustless, that can't be manipulated by anybody in the network. You can literally take the exact same stuff we worked at Qualcomm for 20 years and apply it here. That's why I couldn't sleep for like a week. Yeah, so that was the start of it. Yep.
So now let's go into what does Solana do?
It's think of it as Ethereum, but multi-threaded and really, really optimized. So there's no sharding, there's no subcommittees. It's one giant, massively replicated state machine. And the ultimate goal for us is this idea that if you optimize these networks, at the core, what you're optimizing is for censorship resistance, the minimum set of nodes that are required to halt the network. What is that smallest possible group that can break everything? Because we've made this thing much, much faster, that group can be much, much larger. So like one of our networks, TDS, which is kind of our test net where we stress test our validators, that has over 1,000 validators. The stake distribution there, the minimum set of nodes to break it is larger than an ETH2 shard. So it's over 200. So a single Ethereum shard is smaller than the minimum set of nodes that can break Solana and TDS. So we've basically scaled it beyond, I think, what anybody expected. When you look at like Vitalik's conversations about sharding, he's talking about limits of these single sharded networks to be somewhere between 10 to 100 nodes. Well, we're already at 1,000. So we kind of, why any of this stuff matters is that if you have true censorship resistance and high performance, then you're effectively building a super connected world. There's no intermediaries. Everybody with a public key, right, with a bit of cryptography is super connected to everybody else because there's nobody that can stop any messages going between any of those two people.
So what are we talking about when it comes to performance? What does high performance mean? Are we talking about TPS? Are we talking about
both? Both. Yeah. So TPS and latency. So, cell phones both optimize for bandwidth and how quickly messages get relayed. So that we're kind of focused on both of those things. Our block times are 400 milliseconds. Under like good conditions, you can get a confirmed notification in like 1 to 2 seconds from a trade. Because we're scaling everything with cores with GPUs, our TPS capacity is pretty high. So when we did our test at launch, it was about 50,000 TPS.
Wow.
Our validated, but this is literally just due to hardware, right? Like, so since a year ago, our validators that are like super into like PC building, performance optimizations, they have built systems that can do 100,000 TPS, and like last week somebody did a 200,000 TPS system.
Wow.
So for that to actually be impactful in the network, I mean, we need to get that particular set of hardware deployed to basically all 1,000 validators, and we can do that when there's demand for it. So one of the use cases that we have that's running on Solana is Serum, which is a central limit order book style exchange. If you look at like NASDAQ, they handle 500,000 messages per second. Vast majority of those are canceled messages. This is how central limit order books work. This is how they do price discovery. This is how everybody maintains, capital efficiency. So that's what Serum does. Majority of the messages they transmit are, cancel messages, like move my price around. If the volumes there grow to compete with Binance, so will the number of messages, and that's when we're going to need the hardware.
So this goes to, I think, a natural question of where do you think this is going to go? And I want to ask this, and I want to frame this around, there's plenty of platforms. There's Ethereum, there's Binance Smart Chain, there's Zilliqa, there's, I don't know, but Cardano, there's all kinds of crap. There's,
yeah.
So how do you kind of cut through all of that and make this a thing? Because there's a lot of things out there.
Yeah. So we're like, the core of what we're building is this idea of the super connected world and censorship resistance. Every optimization we make allows us to grow that set. Every time hardware improves, allows us to grow that set. And that idea is extremely powerful because when you have 8 billion people that are all super connected, there's no moats, there's no middlemen. You literally have the people that want to, like do stuff and the value producers all connected directly with each other without anybody taking a few percentage points and everything in the middle, right? There's no $12 a month bank fees there. That's the world that we're working for. So the kind of community that we built was around that idea, but achieving it with blood, sweat, and tears, optimizations, hardware, building out this network at a global way. The folks that are participating in this are from, at this point, I think from like every different continent outside of Antarctica. And like they're running validators in Russia, inside the Great Firewall in China, right? Like, so that to me is that like that future of a super connected world, it needs this ridiculously censorship resistant network. That level of censorship resistance needs to be so high that like, at a gut level, you don't even worry about it. I don't know what that number is, right? Right now, like that minimum set on TDS is 200. We need to get mainnet to a level where it's like 3,000-4,000 validators in that minimum set that can shut down the network. And then folks like engineers, like chief security officer at Bank of America can look at it and a gut level understand no one's ever going to screw with anything in this universal computer. So I can then put my customers here. I can start building these like next generation banks. It's probably not going to be them. It's going to be a startup that sees that opportunity and it's like I can basically take over all the business that Bank of America has by using this network, and I have the same security guarantees, if not higher.
Let me just talk about censorship resistance really quick. And can you please, let me rephrase that question. Can you just talk about censorship resistance really quick? And you did a little bit, but I actually want to go about a censorship resistant future. Let's just say hypothetical situation. Solana cuts through all this mess. Banks and the new startups are using Solana. What does that look like? Because I think that when we think about censorship, censorship is a broad word with a lot of different definitions depending on where it's applied. In
Yeah.
what context are you saying censorship resistant?
Um, it's literally like the lowest possible hardware level context. Imagine everybody in the world had a radio that cannot be shut down, right? It cannot be jammed, and they could transmit with infinite power to everyone else. So that means that we're all super connected, right? I can send my message to everyone else in the world, and it's guaranteed to arrive, right? And if I have a bit of cryptography, that message can carry a lot of information and guarantees saying that like, hey, I'm Anatoly, I want to connect with you, or I want to, go into a smart contract, an AMM, and pull our funds together, or simply I want to like talk to you in a social network, right? Without anybody shutting it down. If we have that world, then there's no intermediaries, and even things like ad-based social networks go away, because we can have a community of creators that are just super connected. They can all talk to each other, right? They can create value in that group. People can participate in that group. And there's no need for a central party like Facebook to mine their data, shove them information that nobody wants, and like basically scrape your identity, right? Like for profit. All that goes away. So that's the world that I think we will get to. And there's still going to be humans involved. It's still going to be like a bunch of stuff that happens that's bad. You see it on Ethereum all the time. But I think in the long term, you will see things like Facebook, like Google, whose business models are based around taking your information and mining it, kind of go away. And you'll see like a truly creator to consumer connected world.
How do you think, Liz, last question, first of all, thank you very much for your time so far. Where do you think Solana has to go to be able to be the platform for the world that you just described? Look, you just said that NASDAQ is working with 500,000 transactions per second. You're talking about social media. We're talking about, that's 8 billion people you just mentioned in the world. And by the time this is actually, mainstream, we're going to have 9. How big do you have to scale this?
So the way I think of it is like Google serves about 350,000 ads per second. That's basically all of humanity, right? Like is like using a single network like Google, and the total amount of stuff that happens in the world right now is maybe 2 Google's worth. Like Google is like the 80%, and then 20% covers the rest of it, right? Like, so we need to get to 2 Google's worth. And the hardware,
is that possible?
Yeah. 700,000 TPS can fit into 1 gigabit pipe. So if that's the most best case scenario, 4x it, because everything's gonna suck and we'll need 4x the amount of hardware. So maybe it's 4 gigabits, right? But that's already available at like everywhere in the world, right? Right now, like 5G networks, the standard is a train moving in China and somebody driving in San Francisco. They can maintain 1 gigabit real-time communication between both of those moving targets. So we're entering a world where I think bandwidth for all the stuff that we do today will be unlimited. But there's obviously going to be stuff that soaks it up, 6 degrees of freedom, real-time video, whatever people want, right? Like people will use it because it's cheap enough. But for all the kind of level, like financial stuff, everything that we've been doing, in the 80s and like 90s and even the aughts should be free. Like it should basically run the cost of almost nothing. It's going to be like, noise compared to everything else that's going to be built in the next 10 years.
Anatoly Yakovenko, president of, did I say that right?
Yeah, you nailed
thank
it.
you. Anatoly Yakovenko, president of the Solana Foundation. Thank you very much for coming on the show, giving us a 101 on Solana and much more. And one, I want to say, I appreciate you having a couple beers and having these great ideas, because I think beer and great ideas go hand in hand.
It was 2 beers and a coffee, man. That's the right mixture.
Gotcha. Thanks, brother.
All right, take care.